I accidentally squashed a maggot, but the system told me I'd slain a dragon. I casually swatted a cockroach and actually got the god-tier skill, immortality. Even my own system suspected I had a cheat system. I'd been transported to a parallel world where people could cultivate. But not only was my aptitude mediocre, the system I got was a total idiot. One day, while I was taking a nap, the system's voice suddenly rang out. King Rank Star Beast, the immortal cockroach, has been detected. There's no time to run. Host, please leave your last words immediately. What are you yapping about now? It's just a cockroach. Sure, it's a little bigger and a little uglier, but is it bigger than the bottom of my shoe? Host has been detected killing a beast king of a higher rank. Damage taken is rapidly healing. Get lost, you're spouting nonsense again. I was just about to tear into you. A powerful energy suddenly surged through my body. I clenched my fists. I could actually feel the presence of true essence. And in this world, you need true essence to cultivate. No way, S-wise. You're for real? But, after thinking about it carefully, doesn't this just mean I'm a bit tougher than a normal person? I still need to lay low and build up my strength. My job is a security guard at a library, in charge of managing some martial arts manuals. From then on, I spent my days swimming in an ocean of knowledge. Although I trained exceptionally hard, my natural talent and aptitude were just terrible. I practiced for a whole month straight and still couldn't master a single manual. And these were supposed to be the entry-level ones. Just as I was about to step out for a smoke, that pleasant voice popped up again. Beast Emperor's aura detected. Host, flee for your life immediately, or you won't survive. Yeah, right, race. Purple Soul Demon Spider. Rank. Emperor. Talent. Innate intelligence. Hobby. Studying human martial arts. Holy crap, it really is Emperor rank. Oh, crap, you piece of crap, you really know how to get me killed. I was blind to trust you. The host has actually killed an Emperor rank star beast, a feat far above your level. Reward. Heaven-defying comprehension. Plus 20 years of cultivation. Shanshan realm, ha ha ha, I burst out laughing. In all of Zhanghai City, they say there are only 3 Shanshan realm masters. I finally have the power to protect myself. Then I suddenly remembered, didn't I also get something called heaven-defying comprehension? All those martial arts manuals I read before instantly flashed through my mind. Clear wind sword style, perfected. 7-star steps, perfected. This heaven-defying comprehension is actually more like an enlightenment space. After any technique I've seen is practiced within it, I can instantly master it completely. A bold idea appeared in my mind. Could I maybe try to create my own martial art? At that thought, I immediately returned to the library and focused solely on sword technique manuals. I had a photographic memory for every word I read. In just a few days, I had mastered more than a dozen different sword arts. After tens of thousands of mental simulations, they finally merged into a single, powerful Shanshan sword art. I went to the outskirts of the city. With a single thought, my sword intent began to hum. The sword energy in my hand formed a 10-meter-long blade of light as I suddenly swung it out. The blade of light tore through the air, instantly slicing a mountaintop in two. This move is called One Sword to Open Heaven's Gate. But before I could even finish posing, I suddenly sensed several presences speeding towards me. This is bad, I need to lay low for now. I immediately performed the 7-star steps and instantly vanished from where I stood. For the next few days, I stayed cooped up in the library. Can't help it, I'm just too eager to improve. But that time I casually split a mountaintop. That incident actually went viral. The entire city of Zhanghai is buzzing about it. Everyone's asking who this great sword master could be. Then, the appearance of a young girl brought me a new opportunity. Empress's whereabouts detected. Host, please kowtow and become her disciple at once. I looked at this little newbie in front of me who had just turned 18. I was totally confused. I always figured the Empress wouldn't look like this. Shouldn't she look like a cold, glamorous, older woman? While I was hesitating, a data window popped up. Name, Lu Rian. Lifespan, 518 years. Level: Perfected Emperor. Holy crap, it's for real. Without another word, I immediately went over to strike up a conversation. After we talked for a bit, I learned that this young girl was indeed named Lu Rian. Except she was only 18. Suddenly, I had a flash of insight. I've finally figured this system out. It's showing me the evolved versions of people from 500 years in the future. Whether it's Xiao Chang or Spider, they all only become badasses 500 years from now. Amazing. From now on, I'll have to be more respectful when I talk to you, bro system. But right now, Lu Rian is just a little weakling in the Hushan realm. Compared to her, I'm both old and strong. If I go up and ask to be her disciple, I'll definitely be seen as a creepy old man with bad intentions. But still, I can't just pass up the reward for mentoring a future powerhouse. So for the next few days, I followed her in secret. And after observing her, I discovered that this Lu Rian was actually a sword cultivator, and her master was the dean of the martial arts academy. She's widely recognized as the top genius, until I followed her to the ruins where I sliced the mountaintop. Don't tell me this girl is actually my #1 fan? Suddenly, a plan formed in my mind. Who says I have to follow the system script? The system told me to retreat, but I destroyed them instead. And I still got the reward, right? Of course, I can't just get rid of Lu Rian. But wouldn't it be way more satisfying to make her beg me to be her master? Then, I donned a black robe and a wide-brimmed bamboo hat. In an instant, I landed right in front of her. It's showtime. The lingering sword intent from my previous strike is still crying out in the wind. The flow of wind here is too chaotic, I said as I waved my hand. In a flash, everything fell dead silent. Lu Rian's face turned pale with shock. The sword energy that even her own master couldn't comprehend was just casually neutralized by this old man. Could it be? Are you that supreme sword master? Empress detected at close range. This opportunity is fleeting. Host, kowtow at once. You, shut your mic. I see that you have a remarkable constitution. Are you willing to be my disciple? Upon hearing this, Lu Rian trembled. Could such a heaven-sent opportunity really arrive in such a surreal way? The master she dreamed of day and night wants to accept her as his disciple. Without a second thought, she kowtowed to me 3 times with a thud. The system seemed to glitch, taking a second to process before giving a notification. Holy crap, the Empress actually knelt to you. You're really ruthless. Congratulations, host, you have obtained the Divine Zoe Sword. Obtained D-rank movement technique, heaven-slaying sword drawing art, plus 50 years of cultivation. Good, good. I, your master, prefer peace and quiet. I prefer peace and quiet. What happened today must not be spoken of to anyone else. After that, I quickly found a hidden valley. The rewards the Empress dropped were top tier, just as expected. The Divine Zoe Sword, the moment it was unsheathed, the heavens and earth trembled. The clear ring of the sword, carrying the divine purple glow, pierced through the clouds, instantly alerting all the powerful figures in Zhanghai City. Next was refining the 50 years of cultivation. The dense true qi formed a massive vortex. It surged madly into my body. My cultivation level also broke through to the peak of the Shanshan realm, half a step away from Grandmaster. Finally, I took out the D-rank ultimate skill I coveted the most. The heaven-slaying sword drawing art. By this time, the area outside the valley was already packed solid with people. Among them were many experts, including the director of the Martial Arts Academy and the chief of the new Armed Police Division. But the rampaging sword pressure inside the valley stopped anyone from daring to take even half a step forward. In a daze, they heard a sound like a dragon's roar as a sword was drawn from its sheath. The sword is unsheathed, and the void shatters. Just the killing intent it gave off made everyone outside the valley tremble in fear. A top-tier secret manual. It truly lives up to its name. I practiced this move countless times in the enlightenment space. I don't know how much time passed, but I let out a long, turbid breath. I've mastered the heaven-slaying sword-drawing art. This time, I once again hid my contribution in name, then yawned and slipped away quietly. But, as expected, the incident made headlines again, and that valley became some kind of sword Dao spectacle. The next day, I showed up at the library on time again. Before I reached the #1 spot, I absolutely will not reveal myself. Just as I was about to explore the second floor of the library, the system's voice suddenly blared out. Detecting the descent of an Emperor-level blood demon. Extremely dangerous. Host, please flee immediately. No, wait, please dispatch your apprentice to kill the enemy at once. Good heavens, this monster sure spawns frequently. It doesn't matter if there's a reward or not. The main thing is, this mission is too tricky. Haha, it's safer if I, your master, go myself. After rushing to the central lake, I realized the situation wasn't so simple. Dozens of fully armed guards were standing by the shore and leading them. Were the only 3 remaining Shanshan masters in Zhonghai City. Suddenly, a blood-red monster leapt out of the water. It was a massive blood-sucking leech. The 3 Shanshan masters instantly engaged it in a chaotic battle. One of them, the director of the Martial Arts Academy, actually used a weakened version of the sword-drawing art, based on the insight he gained last night. But the blood-sucking leech was fighting 1 against 3 without losing any ground. It let out a strange cry and sprayed poisonous blood everywhere. All the officers who were hit by it were poisoned and died. Even the director and the other 2 masters were severely injured. At that moment, a figure leapt across the center of the lake. Sword opens the gates of heaven. As expected of my apprentice, Lu Rian, this peak attack sliced a huge bloody gash into the leech, but it also completely drained her of her true chi. Even my sword shattered when the water creature lunged at me. I had no strength left to parry. I let out a sigh. It seems I can no longer hide my identity as the sword god of Zhonghai. My sword energy spans 30,000 miles. A single slash, its cold light freezing 19 states. Sword, come. That was my master's technique. The water creature was pinned by the ferocious sword energy, unable to move. The Zawei divine sword pierced through it, and its massive red body exploded with a thunderous roar, taking the lake water with it. And its final, baffled expression seemed to be asking the big shot a question. The system's trembling voice rang out. The host has instantly killed an Emperor-level blood demon. Reward: God-level ultimate technique, the Blood God art, plus 20 years of cultivation power. To avoid attracting attention, I immediately headed for the outskirts of the city. 20 years of cultivation. 20 years of cultivation. I refined it immediately. My cultivation, already at the peak of the innate stage, instantly broke through to the next level. Feeling this immense power, the title of Grand Master truly lives up to its reputation. And this Blood God art is totally my style. I can use my blood essence to forge a Blood God clone as a body double. Doesn't that mean I can work several jobs at once? My salary would multiply several times over. Word that I'd insta-killed the blood demon with a single slash quickly reached the higher-ups. However, what worried them most was that Zhonghai's 3 top experts were almost wiped out by a single bug. They immediately dispatched an inspection team to provide guidance. Afterwards, I continued to lay low at the library, working as a full-time security guard. To me, this place was basically a treasure trove of secret manuals. As I absorbed more and more sword technique manuals, my one sword to open the heavenly gate was gradually perfected. It was faintly starting to take on the form of a Grandmaster level ultimate technique. With my current strength, even in the entire province, I have to be one of the rarest of the rare, right? I lived a peaceful life for a while, but that all changed one night when I was heading home late. I freaking ran into a ghost in my own apartment building. I live in an old residential block on the edge of the city. When I got to the 6th floor, a sharp, ghostly wail suddenly echoed from the cold, dark hallway. A female ghost in a flowing white dress, her face hidden by long hair, appeared beneath the light. Paired with the eerie glow from the sign, it felt like I was in the underworld. Even the paranormal investigators would have to call this paranormal. Just as I was debating whether to fight or flee, a system warning popped up in my mind. Yellow level beast detected, 9-tailed fox. Discretion is the better part of valor. Host, please retreat immediately. A 9-tailed fox? Just a carbon-based life form. Such pathetic tricks? How dare you show off in front of a true master? I could tell you weren't human with a single glance. What the hell, are you crazy? Species: 9-tailed spirit fox. Level: early innate stage. Skill: Green Hill Illusory Realm. I'll give you 2 options. 1. Acknowledge me as your master. You'll be at my command from now on. Or 2. You can become a fox fur vest in my wardrobe. A warrior can be killed, but not humiliated. From now on, you are my master." After we got home, she begged me for mercy while doing the housework. Apparently, she likes to play tricks, scaring people so she can absorb a little of their spiritual energy. She just never imagined that a master was hiding in this rundown old apartment complex. Suddenly, I slapped my thigh, remembering something important. Beep. Damn it, system, are you playing dead on me? Hey, where's my reward? Seriously, bro? A prodigy at the Beast Emperor level. And you're using him as an hourly worker? Congratulations, host, you have obtained the Purple Sun Visualization Technique. Plus 20 years of cultivation, directly stabilizing me at the mid-stage Grandmaster realm. And this Purple Sun Visualization Technique is actually a divine art for cultivating spiritual power. It looks like becoming an all-around genius is just around the corner. The next day, I arrived at Broken Peak Mountain, planning to test my new moves, but I didn't expect to run right into Lu Rian, who was also there. At that moment, as dusk fell, he looked exceptionally lonely and helpless. And his chaotic emotions were constantly being picked up by my divine sense. Something's wrong. Something is very, very wrong. His aura is a mess, and he's being consumed by anxiety. Is this apprentice of mine about to have a chi deviation? No way. I can't let my source of rewards have any accidents. My apprentice said, a great sword wielder, who calls himself the Sword Saint of the Grasslands, is taking his disciple and challenging dojos everywhere. This master-disciple duo is insanely strong. They win wherever they go. And Lu Rian has to act as Zhanghai City's #1 contender. To face the Sword Saint's challenge, he knows he can't win. But the honor of Zhanghai City is on the line, which has put him under immense pressure. Damn, life is already hard enough. You don't need to be afraid of anyone. With that said, I pointed my finger toward the center of Lu Rian's forehead. A violent torrent of sword path insights was instantly transmitted into his sea of consciousness. Compared to an Earth-level grand prize, this little trick is nothing. But this completely stunned Lu Rian. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed loudly to me 3 more times. Afterwards, Lu Rian spoke up again. Teacher, you must be wary of this Grandmaster. The real reason the Perfection Realm Sword Saint came to Zhanghai City is for you. Did I provoke him? Is there a treasure chest? So, he's challenging me? But on second thought, anyway, no one has ever seen me. I'll just say I'm away on a business trip, and that'll be the end of it. Thinking of this, I didn't even bother practicing my moves and quickly fled this troublesome place. In the days that followed, I went to the 2nd floor of the library. With the help of the Divine Stone, my control over the Blood God art became more and more masterful. I was just about to open a short video app to relax, but the first video I swiped to was news that the Sword Saint of the Grasslands and his disciple I had already arrived in Zhanghai City. The Sword Saint is called Tang Ba, a master of raging fire. His disciple is called Xiao Huo, first on the life-taking list. That man of raging fire. With the attitude that it had nothing to do with me, I was just about to swipe it from my mind. When I remembered the system's notification, detected the appearance of D-rank sword demon expert, Xiao Huo. Even the Empress can't handle this one. Host, please flee immediately. Holy crap, D-rank? If you're going to pull this on me, I'm wide awake now. I thought about it for a second. If I were to play all my cards, taking down his Sword Saint Master wouldn't even be that hard. But then, I had a flash of inspiration. Don't I still have Lu Rian, my professional proxy fighter? Besides, it never said he had to be killed, just defeated. At that thought, I rushed to the arena. Right now, the arena didn't have a single empty seat. You could say the whole world was watching. I stared at Xiao Huo down on the stage. His profile immediately popped up in front of me. Name, Xiao Huo, L, age, 517, level, Early Stage Emperor Venerable Realm. Excellent. I can't wait to get my hands on this little guy's loot. This guy really is the sword demon the system mentioned. Old Bros Comics. In the audience, Qin Yang was grabbing popcorn and stuffing it in his mouth. His gaze remained fixed on Xiao Huo. The fierce young man seemed completely unconcerned about the astral power radiating from him. It was more like a kind of arrogance that placed him above everyone else. Qin Yang only needed a moment to sense and understand his opponent's realm. it was profound, natural, and in tune with the world. He had clearly reached the half-step innate realm. To reach this level at only 17, his talent was indeed outstanding, but the one he was betting on, Lu Rian, was no ordinary person either. At just 16 years old, she had reached the 9th level of the acquired realm, in no way inferior to this Xiao Huo. Well now, looks like he's been matched with an equal opponent. Thinking this, Qin Yang shook his head. He skillfully pulled a can of Coke from his bag, popped the tab with a flick of his finger, took a few gulps, and leaned back comfortably in his chair. He found this very interesting. The upcoming match was going to be quite a show. The young sword devil versus the budding empress. The twists and turns of fate were truly something to behold. I wonder what kind of impact my interference this time will have 500 years from now. At that thought, Qin Yang drained the rest of his Coke and turned his attention back to the martial arts plaza. Let's get started. A quick fight, so you don't waste my time. Xiao Huo cracked his neck and stretched his muscles. The nearby seats below the stage were divided into two groups. One group was in the exclusive VIP section. Yuan Zan, Elder Li, and others were seated there. The other group consisted of the top students from the Zhanghai Martial Arts Academy. They were here specifically to observe and learn. Xiao Huo's eyes swept over the seats below the stage. His gaze traveled from Elder Li all the way to the students, making no effort to hide his disdain. After all, he had already defeated dozens of young prodigies in a row. In the beginning, Xiao Huo still held a bit of respect, even bowing to his challengers. But after one crushing victory after another, all his patience had vanished. So, these so-called prodigies were this pathetic. Respect needs to be earned through strength. And since I'm so strong, why should I show respect to a bunch of trash? With this thought, Xiao Huo scanned the entire arena. He waited for the challenger to come on stage, the contempt in his eyes growing even stronger. Instantly, Sim became displeased. Hey, senior, look at that guy staring at us. Why the look of contempt? He's so arrogant. Doesn't he have any manners? Does he really think no one in our academy can beat him? Whispers rose from below the stage. The students being stared at were somewhat annoyed but helpless. That guy really had the right to be arrogant, having steamrolled his way here. It was a clear sign of his overwhelming power. Thinking of this, the crowd turned their gazes to Lu Rian, who was in the center seat. They couldn't help but worry about her. Lu Rian was sitting in her chair, resting with her eyes closed. Just then, she felt a slight buzz in her ear. Go on up, Xuan. As the voice faded, Lu Rian opened her eyes. She grabbed the sword from the table and slowly stood up straight. Standing out from the crowd like a crane among chickens, she slowly walked toward the stage. The moment she rose from her seat, her restrained sword intent erupted with astonishing force, like a sharp sword being unsheathed. Feeling this wave of sword intent, Xiao Huo's expression changed abruptly. His previously careless demeanor vanished in an instant. There's someone in this academy with such strong sword intent? And it's a girl? At this thought, Xiao Huo looked Lu Rian up and down, a flash of fiery interest crossing the depths of his eyes. I didn't expect to find such a pleasant surprise here in Zhanghai. In the VIP section, Yuan Zan, sitting with his chin in his hand, was also somewhat surprised to see Lu Rian appear. An expert can tell at a glance. Just based on this sharp sword intent alone, Lu Rian's future in the way of the sword is bound to be limitless. Your Zhanghai Academy is truly something else. To think you were hiding such a promising talent in the way of the sword. Xuan has always been the pride of our Zhanghai Academy. Hearing this, Elder Li felt immensely proud as well. He turned to look at Lu Rian, his aging eyes filled with gentleness. Indeed, Yuan Zan nodded slightly in admiration. Such extraordinary talent. It's true, he competed against my disciple in the last round. On the martial arts stage, Lu Rian stood in a corner of the stage, holding her sword in one hand. Her eyelids were lowered, her pupils as still as a placid autumn lake. She seemed almost as impassive as the heavens themselves. Her robes fluttered as if a celestial fairy had descended to the mortal realm. Upon seeing this, the crowd in the audience was instantly mesmerized. Go, Senior Sister Li. Senior Sister Li looks so beautiful today. Zhanghai Martial Arts Academy will win for sure, and opposite her, Xiao Huo stood in the other corner of the stage, his muscular upper body bare. He held a massive, ruler-like heavy sword as tall as he was, giving him a very fierce look. Xiao Huo laughed heartily, flexing his rippling muscles. The veins on his neck writhed like angry serpents. Suddenly, his figure vanished. Before the crowd could even react, the next moment, Xiao Huo instantly appeared behind Lu Rian. So fast, Lu Rian's pupils constricted. She immediately raised her sword, moving to parry the heavy blade. An arc of light and afterimages flashed past. Lu Rian spun her slender sword, using the heavy sword's momentum against it. She closed the distance, the sunlight reflecting off her blade like a ball of white light rolling across the wide face of the heavy sword. Swift as lightning, yet light as a drifting breeze. In an instant, the tables turned from defense to offense. Clear wind sword style. Xiao Huo was stunned for a moment, then immediately recognized the origin of this sword style. But to be able to use such a basic technique in a real fight was no easy feat, as the chilling glint of her sword came at him. Just as it was about to strike his face, Xiao Huo, unhurried, simply lifted his heavy sword with great force. The immense power kicked up a gust of wind, instantly launching Lu Rian high into the air. But she was unharmed. Lu Rian shifted her posture in midair with incredible grace, landing back on the stage. Once she had her footing, she charged at Xiao Huo once more. Clang, clang. The two swords met several times within seconds, the sound like ringing wind chimes. The exquisite techniques were a sight to behold, a true display of peak swordsmanship. The battle on the stage reached a stalemate. Everyone had expected Lu Rian to be defeated quickly, but now she was holding her own, leaving them all astonished. Even Elder Li was taken aback. Watching the intense fight, his surprise gave way to a look of gratification. It seems that girl, Xuan, has been working really hard lately. Below the stage at Zhanghai Martial Arts Academy, the spectator stands were a sea of fluttering banners. The temporary seating, like high walls, was packed to capacity with an eager audience. The roar of their shouts and chatter was like thunder, as waves of cheers crashed one after another. Clang. On the stage, two figures, one light and one dark, clashed and crossed. The cold glint of their blades flashed like lightning. A powerful shockwave erupted, accompanied by the ear-piercing screech of metal on metal. Lu Rian and Xiao Huo fought fiercely, their sword intense clashing as their blades collided. The sounds were like a melody of bells. In a flash, they exchanged steps and blows. After a dozen rounds, they were still evenly matched. The next moment, they broke apart, facing each other on the stage. Xiao Huo looked at Lu Rian's calm and composed demeanor, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity. Xiao Huo laughed heartily, flexing his rippling muscles. The veins on his neck writhed like angry serpents. I never thought I'd find something so rewarding here in Zhanghai. The stronger Lu Rian was, the more excited he became. After all, the thrill of conquering a strong opponent is addictive. A madman, Lu Rian thought, her brow furrowing as she watched his expression. She recalled something Elder Li had told her. This Xiao Huo was obsessed with the sword, as if it were his very life. He lived by the creed, no obsession, no survival. Even as a child, he showed extraordinary talent for swordsmanship. He once fought off a pack of wolves in the wild with just a stick, and single-handedly wiped out a den of bandits on the plains. Later, he met his master, the sword saint of the plains, and went so far as to abandon his birth name and sever all ties to his past, taking the single name, sword. To prove his devotion to the way of the sword, I have to be extremely careful when fighting a madman like him. Thinking of this, Lu Rian slowly took a step back, holding her sword in front of her, cautiously observing Xiao Huo's movements. Although she was confident she could win, it didn't mean she was arrogant enough to underestimate Xiao Huo. Xiao Huo had roamed the great grasslands for years. He was wild and fierce, and his specialty was a lethal style of swordplay. The exchange just now had been incredibly perilous. In just a few breaths, Xiao Huo had struck 53 times, with killing blows coming one after another. All of them were aimed at Lu Rian's vital points. If she hadn't been a cut above in skill, he would have likely run her through until she was cold. This thought, Lu Rian shifted a few more steps to the left, facing off against Xiao Huo. Drawing a smooth arc, sometimes, victory and defeat are decided in a single instant. The timing had to be grasped perfectly. At this moment, the situation reached a stalemate. Countless eyes were locked on the martial arts stage. Boom! Xiao Huo tapped his toes on the ground, instantly shattering it into a deep crater, and charged forward with his sword again, like a fierce tiger pouncing on a lamb. Lu Rian was equally fearless, seizing the right moment to meet his charge. Clang, 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 a continuous series of sword clashes rang out. Amidst the dense wave of sound, their longswords struck each other countless times. It formed a deafening hum that directly injured the eardrums of many spectators. But even so, the two remained locked in a fierce, inseparable battle, stuck in an unbreakable stalemate. Lu Rian's expression was calm as she continuously used her sword to fend off the enemy, while in contrast, Xiao Huo's expression grew more and more intense, twisting into a kind of irrepressible excitement. That's it, the more you struggle, the more I enjoy this. Xiao Huo laughed maniacally, his eyes bloodshot, looking like a mad demon. Boom! The next moment, the sword intent around his body exploded, splitting from 1 to 2, then to 3, instantly generating hundreds and thousands of sword energy strands, dense and utterly terrifying. Not good. Seeing the danger, a strong sense of crisis suddenly struck Lu Rian. This must be some kind of trump card. Thinking this, Lu Rian's movement faltered, and she immediately withdrew from the intense fight, moving several meters away from Xiao Huo. But after she retreated, the sword energy around Xiao Huo still showed no signs of dissipating. It was still surging wildly, the sword intent dividing as if from an endless source. It directly formed a pillar of energy that pierced the heavens, churning up the clouds in the sky. Countless streams of sword energy returned to it, transforming endlessly before merging into one. Myriad swords return as one. Below the stage, Old Man Li was instantly struck speechless when he saw this. The Sword Saint, he even taught him this? He turned to look at Yuan Zhan beside him, his heart instantly sinking to the depths. This was the Grassland Sword Saint's signature technique back in the day. Myriad swords return as one. One who masters it can condense tens of thousands of sword energy streams to destroy heaven and earth. Even though Xiao Huo's current strength is still weak, and he hasn't yet reached the level of mastery the Sword Saint had back then, he has at least managed to condense over 1,000 streams of sword energy. It would be easy for him to kill someone in the innate realm, even fighting above his level. And Lu Rian is only in the acquired realm. How could she possibly block this attack? The crowd gazed up at the massive pillar of sword energy piercing the sky. Countless sword intents swirled within it, leaving no room to even get close. Even from below the stage, they could feel an extremely strong sense of pressure, their bodies beginning to tremble uncontrollably. It's over, it's over. Senior Sister Li's defeat is sealed. That's like a cheat. How is anyone supposed to fight that? That's insane. So this is what a battle between geniuses is like? The clamor reached Lu Rian's ears. On her usually expressionless face, for the first time, a grave look appeared, her thoughts racing. The sword intent ravaged the stage. If I make one wrong move, the whole game is lost. What do I do? What should my next move be? She found herself becoming somewhat lost in confusion. However, just as Lu Rian was lost in confusion, suddenly, a swordsman must press ever forward, fearless and undaunted. My disciple, you must believe that the sword in your hand can sweep away everything. The calm and steady voice echoed, revealing the ultimate truth of the way of the sword. Like a divine pillar calming the seas, it instantly suppressed all her chaotic thoughts. Master, hearing the voice, Lu Rian was overjoyed, her body and mind suddenly calming down. She was no longer as panicked as before. So Master has been here all along, watching over me. If that's the case, then what is there to worry about? He is his own beacon, with supreme strength. All she needs to do is simply press forward. I will never disappoint you, Master. As the wind raged, Lu Rian, sword in hand, walked resolutely toward Xiao Huo. Her hair fluttered in the wind as an even more tyrannical sword intent burst forth from her. Sword energy of the heaven-opening sword swept out. Lu Rian's expression was cold as she calmly raised her blade. She stared coldly at the thousands of sword energies from Xiao Huo's side, one sword against 1,000. Though thousands may stand against me, I will go forward. The next moment, she swung her sword as if to cleave the very gates of heaven. It pierced through all obstructing sword energies as if nothing was in its way, aimed straight for Xiao Huo's head. In an instant, the expression of Xiao Huo, who stood at the center of the storm of sword energy, changed dramatically. Lu Rian's blade was so clear and reflective, it mirrored the shocked faces of everyone present. It was as if all of human experience was contained within it. Chapter 67. What is your relationship with the Zhonghai sword god? It's that sword technique again. Below the martial arts stage, Elder Li's eyes widened. He was so excited he shot up from his seat in the VIP section. The last time, during the leech plague at Lishui Lake, Lu Rian had relied on this very startling swan sword light to successfully injure the blood demon. After that incident, Elder Li had asked her about it, but Lu Rian remained silent, refusing to say another word. Elder Li had no choice but to let the matter drop. Regardless of where this sword technique came from, it was Lu Rian's destiny, an incredibly precious opportunity for her cultivation. He cared deeply for his beloved disciple, so naturally he wouldn't do something as sordid as trying to steal her technique. It's just that he never expected that now, only a few days later, Lu Rian would use this move again, its power having multiplied several times over. Xuan has grown so much in just a few days. Elder Li looked up at the brilliant sword light filling the sky as the wind howled. Its power was overwhelming, like a tsunami crashing over the land. In the audience stands, tens of thousands of spectators watched the spectacular scene with him, utterly dumbfounded, their entire beings profoundly shaken. High above in the sky, a strange phenomenon occurred. The sword intent surged like a turbulent current as two different sword energies collided with each other. It was like two dragons battling to the death, shattering the sunlight and scattering the thick sea of clouds. Meanwhile, the stage was now covered in deep pits and gouges. The astral power inscriptions at the four corners spun wildly, raising an astral energy barrier to protect the audience. It was to prevent the sword energy from reaching the surrounding people. Crack, faint, subtle cracking sounds could be heard, and the audience members turned their heads toward the sound. They saw that tiny cracks had actually started appearing on the protective astral formation. It looked like it could shatter at any moment. Seeing this, everyone was instantly stunned. Just what kind of power was this? You have to understand, this formation was made specifically for protection. Even the aftershocks from an early-stage Shanshan master could be held off for a while, but now, it was being shaken by these two juniors who hadn't even reached the Shanshan realm. This is outrageous. Everyone looked at each other, completely shocked. As expected of prodigies, they're damn monsters. I'm impressed. Unleashing the might of a Shanshan expert while still in the Hushan realm. How is anyone else supposed to compete with that? While everyone was talking, the pressure at the center of the stage continued to build. A terrifying storm formed around the array, with countless bursts of sword intent erupting and smashing wildly against the astral barrier. The people in the crowd started to panic. That sword energy was incredibly terrifying, and if it broke through, they would surely be injured. They had only bought tickets to watch a show. It wasn't worth losing their lives over. Everyone, do not panic. This formation will not break. At that moment, Elder Li's sharp cry calmed the entire crowd's panic. The next moment, several powerful streams of astral power covered the barrier, as Yu and Zan and the other masters joined forces. They sealed the cracks, making the barrier as solid as bedrock, stopping the sword intent on the stage from spreading to the surroundings. Instantly, the sword intent on the stage whipped up dust and sand, creating a small sandstorm. Everyone's view was blocked, making it impossible to see the fight clearly. All they could do now was wait. At this moment, they could only wait for the storm of sword intent to stop and the dust to settle. Only then would the barrier of star power finally dissipate. At this thought, the audience on site fell silent. All eyes gathered on the center of the martial arts arena, waiting for the final conclusion to be revealed. A few minutes later, the sword intent on the dueling platform finally dissipated. The air pressure suddenly returned to normal, the star power barrier slowly dissipated, and the dust at the center scattered in all directions. The crowd quickly locked their eyes on the center of the stage. They saw Xiao Huo kneeling on one knee, the longsword in his hand broken, and blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. His face was as pale as a sheet, and in front of him, Lu Rian stood tall and proud, her sword held at an angle with its tip pointed at Xiao Huo's brow, her face still as cold as ice. "The match is over," she said in a low voice, her tone completely devoid of emotion. Hearing her words, Xiao Huo clutched his broken sword and slowly got up, looking at Lu Rian with a complicated expression. Humiliation, indignation, helplessness, all sorts of bitter emotions brewed in his chest. In the end, he just sullenly spat out one sentence. "Yes, I lost." As soon as the words left his mouth, the entire arena instantly burst into an uproar. Countless people in the audience were chanting Lu Rian's name. The roar of the crowd was like rolling thunder, deafening, like the clamorous gongs of a New Year festival. She won. Senior sister Lu won. The winning streak of the Sword Saint's disciple is over, right here in Zhanghai. This feels great. Zhanghai Martial Arts Academy is the greatest in the world. In the audience, students from the academy embraced one another. They savored the joyous moment. This fight of Lu Rian's was of great significance. It was no longer just a personal struggle, but rather a clandestine struggle between their entire factions. They rise and fall together. Many in the audience took out their phones and started taking selfies, recording this historic moment. "Damn, old Chin, you were actually right on the money." In the crowd, he pulled out his phone, turning his back to the stage. He adjusted the angle for a selfie. Just a lucky guess. Qin Yang smiled. He was in a good mood, so he threw his arm around He's shoulders for the picture, capturing the moment. After they took the photo, he looked at Qin Yang beside him and couldn't help but start teasing. "I didn't realize that girl was so tough. You better be careful from now on, old Qin, or you might piss her off someday and get yourself cleaved in two, haha." Qin Yang just smiled without saying a word. Their conversation was drowned out by the chaotic roar of the crowd. The audience stands were buzzing with noise and excitement, which enveloped the entire dueling plaza. Xiao Huo listened to the noise from the crowd, his gaze falling to the broken sword in his hand. His expression was dazed as he muttered to himself, "I can't believe I lost. I will return." He mumbled under his breath and turned woodenly, walking towards the exit of the plaza. His retreating figure looked desolate, his limbs as stiff as a puppet with its strings cut. Lu Rian saw this and was just about to call out to him, but she suddenly felt a cold presence behind her. A suppressive aura descended. Yuan Zhan had appeared silently behind her. "Not bad. I never expected that a minor place like Zhanghai could produce such a fine prodigy like you," Yuan Zhan said with a hearty laugh, slowly walking to stand before Lu Rian as he praised her. With that, he glanced at Xiao Huo's retreating figure. "Don't you worry about my disciple. I'll handle him myself." "Yes." Lu Rian, with a calm and respectful demeanor, bowed with her hands clasped. "You're too kind, senior." Heh. Yuan Zhan's eyes narrowed as he scrutinized Lu Rian from head to toe. He looked just like a kindly senior, and the atmosphere was peaceful. Some reporters at the scene hurried over, raised their cameras, and began pressing the shutters, immediately documenting this calm moment. Lu Rian looked at the reporters and raised a hand to block the flashing lights, getting ready to leave the platform. Suddenly, the voice of the Sword Saint rang out in her mind. "Young lady, what is your relationship with the Sword God of Zhanghai?" As the words faded, Lu Rian's pupils shrank and her heart began to pound wildly, but she forced herself to stay calm and replied in a low voice. "I don't understand what you mean, senior." Upon hearing her reply, Yuan Zhan's eyes narrowed slightly. He gave Lu Rian a meaningful glance and simply let out a soft chuckle. He said nothing more, then turned and walked away in the direction Xiao Huo had left. Chapter 68. A massive burst of 100 years of cultivation. The dueling plaza of Zhanghai Martial Arts Academy. The atmosphere was electric, with cheers echoing throughout the academy. "That'll teach that brat, now he knows how strong we are at Zhanghai." From the audience, he watched the master and his disciple from the grassland scurry away in defeat, a smug look instantly appearing on his face. It was as if he was the one who had just defeated Xiao Huo, not Lu Rian. Without a second thought, he began to silently call out to the dam system. It's been so long without a reply. This damn system must be so shocked it's frozen up again. "System, speak up," Qin Yang shouted repeatedly in his mind. After a long pause, he finally heard the system's trembling voice. "Ding, unbelievable. The host managed to defeat the sword demon just by sending out his disciple. Reward multiplied 100-fold. Congratulations, host, for obtaining 100 years of cultivation. Upon absorption, you can directly reach the peak Grandmaster realm. Congratulations, host, for obtaining the Emperor grade movement technique, a world away." Congratulations, host, for obtaining a scroll of the Profound Heaven Pill Sutra. The wonderful reward announcements came one after another. Qin Yang took a big swig of his soda and munched on his popcorn, finally feeling content. Thinking of this, Qin Yang was a little surprised and took a quick look. First, it fused the accumulated lifelong wisdom of ancient alchemists, while the other emperor-grade martial art, a world away, was even more incredible. It directly involved the profound laws of space. One who mastered it could break the boundaries of space and traverse the void at will. With a single step, the ends of the earth would feel like next door. After briefly looking over the rewards, Qin Yang, seeing that his goal was accomplished, instantly felt bored. He yawned and said to Shahi next to him, "I'm heading out, you take your time watching." "Hey, old Qin, you're leaving already?" He was taken aback. He glanced at Lu Rian on the stage and asked in confusion, "You're really not going to wait?" "Lu Rian will be coming by in a bit. You might even be able to get her autograph. After this match, her fame is definitely going to soar. It'll be difficult for you to ever see her again." Hearing this, Qin Yang rolled his eyes and said irritably, "Not interested. When you go asking for an autograph, don't you dare use my name. In your dreams, I'm heading back." With that, he turned and left, weaving through the bustling crowd alone without a moment's hesitation, leaving Shahi standing there, utterly bewildered. At the center of the martial arts arena, Lu Rian was bathed in cheers. She walked gracefully down the long stairs of the stage, her steps light. She had only taken a few steps off the stage, when she was immediately surrounded by her juniors. "You've worked hard, senior, for restoring the honor of our Zhanghai city. That last move was so awesome. That was a great fight. I think that Xiao Huo's eyes were all red, looked like he was about to cry. An arrogant jerk like him deserves to be put in his place, senior. Have you ever considered teaching a class? Money is no object." The sound of chattering discussion buzzed around Lu Rian. The junior students gazed at her, their eyes shining, filled with admiration and awe. "Alright, break it up. Let Xuan get some rest." Just then, Elder Li approached Lu Rian with his hands behind his back, dispersing the students around her. As he spoke, the other students looked disappointed, but seeing as Elder Li was a respected senior, they couldn't really object and could only disperse reluctantly, clearing the space around her. "Xuan, you have worked hard," Elder Li said, looking at Lu Rian with a gentle and kind expression. "Teacher, you flatter me. This is simply what I should do," Lu Rian said with a light nod. "It was only a narrow victory. It's nothing worth your praise." "That wasn't a narrow victory, Xuan. It was an overwhelming one." Hearing this, Elder Li beamed and said, "The power of your sword technique far surpassed Xiao Huo's 10,000 swords return." As he spoke, he stroked his white beard and couldn't resist asking, "Xuan, this may be a bit forward of me as your teacher, but I must ask. Where exactly did you learn this sword technique?" Hearing his question, Lu Rian immediately became guarded. He was asking about the origin of her sword technique. He had sworn an oath to her master before. She swore she would never reveal a single detail to outsiders, to prevent them from disturbing his peace and quiet. Even if Elder Li were the one asking, she would not break this vow. "You don't wish to speak of it?" Seeing Lu Rian's hesitation, Elder Li shook his head with a smile and waved his hand. "Then there's no need to say it, Xuan. Your teacher won't force you. This must be your own fated opportunity, and as your teacher, I am very gratified." "Yes, thank you, teacher." Lu Rian breathed a sigh of relief. "Come, Xuan, your teacher has already arranged a victory celebration. You should relax a bit too," old Li said with a smile, taking in every one of Lu Rian's expressions. That silly girl is still too young. Truth be told, he'd already guessed it had something to do with the Zhanghai sword god. But since Lu Rian didn't want to reveal much, it wasn't a big deal. The truth will come to light on its own one day. Meanwhile, as Lu Rian's match concluded, the top 10 trending topics on the internet were completely flooded with headlines related to Zhanghai City. You have to understand. This match was broadcast live across the entire internet and was watched by hundreds of millions of people. Countless people witnessed the splendor of Lu Rian shattering all techniques with a single sword. In an instant, a huge commotion spread from the streets and alleys of Zhanghai City, all the way to the higher-ups in the imperial capital, causing a nationwide uproar. Zhanghai Hotel, room number 1. "Master, this disciple has brought you shame. Xiao Huo knelt before Yu Wenzan, his head bowed low. His usual arrogance was long gone. "Rise, my disciple." Yu Wenzan stooped over, extending an aged hand to gently help Xiao Huo up from the floor. "It was just one defeat. It's nothing to worry about." Xiao Huo hesitated, a look of shame on his face. "I've embarrassed you, master. I've never been defeated before. It's all right, it was merely a challenge." Yu Wenzan chuckled softly, fiddling with his agate bracelet. "Lately, your mindset has become increasingly arrogant. A loss can serve to temper you, which might not be a bad thing. Victory and defeat are as fleeting as passing clouds. After 100 years, nothing will be left. Only by focusing on the way of the sword can we find our salvation." "Yes, master." Hearing this, Xiao Huo kept his head down, looking thoroughly and enthusiastic. He still couldn't seem to get over it. Seeing this, Yu Wenzan chuckled. "What's wrong? Are you still upset about losing to a little girl?" Xiao Huo answered in a low voice. "Haha, my disciple, your loss at the hands of that young girl is actually nothing to be ashamed of." "Master, why do you say that?" "Because that girl's background is not so simple," Yu Wenzan said coolly, gazing out the window at the Zhanghai city nightscape. His gaze seemed to pierce through everything. "She is very likely the personal disciple of the Zhanghai sword god. Just what kind of a monster is this guy?" "What?" Xiao Huo's eyes widened, a look of utter shock crossed his face. "So, that Lu Rian is actually the sword god's personal disciple. This news is just too explosive. If word of this got out, it would undoubtedly cause a massive uproar and trigger a whole new wave of online debate. My disciple, don't be hasty. Think for a moment," Yu Wenzan said slowly. "You are my disciple. Below the innate realm, you are unrivaled. And the strongest cultivators in all of Zhanghai City are only at the peak of the innate realm. How could they possibly train a genius like Lu Rian?" Hearing this, Xiao Huo's brow furrowed slightly, but he quickly understood his master's meaning. "That's right, her school is just the Zhanghai Martial Arts Academy. Their instructors are weak. The only one of any note is old Li, who is at the peak of the innate realm. To be blunt, I could go in there and take on a group of their acquired realm teachers without breaking a sweat. How could they possibly come up with a sword technique capable of breaking the myriad swords returned to one?" At this thought, Xiao Huo stood up from the sofa and let out a sigh of relief. The question in his heart was finally answered. He suddenly felt as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, no longer burdened by any frustration. After the battle on the stage, he had thought Lu Rian was some kind of unparalleled talent who had mastered that sword technique all on her own. The thought of her being such a genius had nearly destabilized his sword heart. But fortunately, he had his master's guidance tonight. He finally realized that Lu Rian, just like him, was being guided by a hidden master. "Good, my disciple, I'm glad you understand." Seeing Xiao Huo's spirits lift, Yu Wenzan gave a faint smile. "It's not easy to raise a disciple like Lu Rian. It makes me even more curious about the power of this Zhanghai sword god." Saying this, he walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the pedestrians on the street below. "Tomorrow, I will go to Sword Valley myself and await a battle with him." "Master." Model. Hearing this, Xiao Huo hesitated. "I've heard that the Zhanghai sword god is always elusive. Will he really fight you?" "Heh, as your master, I believe he will come," Yu Wenzan said with a smile, rolling the agate beads in his hand. He patiently explained, "Disciple, when you reach my level, you'll understand. Breaking through the Grandmaster realm is extremely difficult, and it relies heavily on moments of inspiration. Combat is an important way to get those opportunities. Therefore, as your master, I believe that in order to break through his own limits, he will definitely come." Meanwhile, Qin Yong returned to his home. He was comfortably leaning on the sofa, scrolling through short videos. The clatter of pots and pans drifted from the kitchen, filling the air with the scent of a home-cooked meal. Xiao Bai stood on a small stool, peeling and washing vegetables. The slow-cooked soup in the pot had already been simmering for 3 hours. "It's about time." Qin Yong calculated that if he absorbed his reward now, he could transition seamlessly to mealtime. Thinking of this, Qin Yong put down his phone and began to sink into the enlightenment space. "Let's start with you." With a thought, Qin Yong began to absorb the system's reward of 100 years of cultivation. Having done this a few times before, he was already an old hand at it. He guided the 100 years of cultivation into his body. In an instant, immense star power surged through his limbs and bones, warm and pleasant, as if he were soaking in a hot spring. Qin Yang leaned back comfortably on the sofa with his arms resting at his sides, enjoying the change in the star power within him. A warm current shot up from his tailbone and slowly spread, making him tremble and let out a sound. A moan of pleasure escaped him. In the kitchen, Xiao Bai's beast ears twitched and immediately perked up in alert. What's Master screaming about? Xiao Bai wondered curiously and quickly put down the shelled shrimp. She glanced cautiously in Qin Yang's direction and saw him lying spread-eagled on the sofa. He was also making a very, very strange sound. So weird. Seeing this, Xiao Bai was confused and looked disgusted. She remembered hearing from other foxes before that human males seemed to have a special physiological condition. It was called something like the egg-swapping period. Could Master be going through that? At this thought, the disgust on Xiao Bai's face intensified. Unable to watch any longer, she turned away and continued to prepare the shrimp. But just as she lowered her head, boom, an immense wave of star power suddenly erupted, sweeping across the room in all directions. It instantly interrupted her actions. It felt like a landslide or a tsunami, crushing her so much she couldn't breathe. Xiao Bai's tail instinctively puffed up in fear. She grabbed a plate and held it in front of herself. What terrifying star pressure! This is a peak Grandmaster. An enemy is here. Xiao Bai's sense of crisis exploded. She hurriedly tried to locate the source of the star pressure. At the same time, she trotted over to Qin Yang's side, ready to wake him up so they could escape. We live and die together. Losing your eggs is a small matter, but losing your life is a big one. Thinking this, Xiao Bai ran quickly towards Qin Yang, but the closer she got, the more intense the unknown star pressure became. By the time she was 2 meters away from Qin Yang, the terrifying star pressure had even solidified into a physical force. It wouldn't let her get any closer. Xiao Bai was stunned. She stared blankly at Qin Yang on the sofa, her face filled with shock. She finally understood what was happening. It's happening again. This human. He's breaking through again. How is this possible? Xiao Bai crouched on the spot, hugging her tail, and began to question her very existence. What kind of freak is this guy? I never see him cultivating. He just lazes around in the library every day. How can he break through so easily? And to the peak of the Grandmaster realm, no less. This is absurd. Xiao Bai was completely numb. After pondering for a moment, she could only tuck her tail between her legs and tremble back to the kitchen to continue preparing the rest of the food. Can't be helped. For a fox, survival comes first. At the same time, Qin Yang finished absorbing the 100 years of cultivation. He began to absorb the remaining 2 rewards. The Xuanshan pill scripture was primarily focused on alchemy. It contained all the pill formulas in the world and wondrous theories, recording countless pharmacological secrets. Saving or killing someone could be decided with a single thought. Qin Yang, with his heaven-defying comprehension, instantly assimilated everything. Not bad, not bad, it's just that my head feels so itchy. Satisfied, Qin Yang scratched his head and continued to assimilate the last Emperor-level movement technique, a step to the horizon. A moment later, all the rewards dropped by the system had been received. Much better. Qin Yang opened his eyes, satisfied, and saw that Xiao Bai had already started serving the food. Time to eat, so he used a step to the horizon, and instantly appeared beside her. It startled her so much she trembled all over, letting out a fox's yelp. Strange. Seeing this, Qin Yang felt a little puzzled. Why does it feel like Xiao Bai is even more afraid of me tonight? The next morning, Qin Yang was casually heading to work to clock in. Just as he entered the hall, he noticed that the number of visitors seemed very low today, much lower than usual. Usually by this time, there would already be people lining up at the entrance, ready to rush in and grab a spot in the lounge. But today, there were only a few people scattered about. It's not a closing day. As Qin Yang was wondering about this, he suddenly saw He jogging towards him from a distance, holding up his phone. While pointing at the screen, he shouted excitedly, "Old Qin, look at my phone. Something huge is happening. The Sword Saint of Sword Valley is over there publicly challenging the Sword God of Zhanghai. Yuan Zhan is challenging someone at Sword Valley?" Hearing this, Qin Yang was quite surprised. Why is it so early? Weren't there still 5 days until the date he announced? Who knows? He shrugged and casually swiped to a news page. Then he handed the phone to Qin Yang, saying, "See for yourself. Everyone's talking about it online. It's totally blowing up. It's already more popular than the Academy Challenge was. and it shot straight to number 1 on the trending list. Let me see. Chin Young took the phone and started looking at the trending topics. And sure enough, the internet was flooded with discussions. Related trending topics were dominating the number 1 spot, and everyone was talking about it. He's here to avenge his disciple. I heard he's going to wait at Sword Valley for 5 days, ready to welcome the sword god of Zhonghai anytime. So arrogant and stubborn. I think the master and disciple are cut from the same cloth. They're just a couple of stubborn sword maniacs. Do you guys think the sword god of Zhonghai will show up? He seems like a reclusive master who probably isn't interested in this stuff. Chin Yong read through the comments and noticed everyone was focused on the same thing. Everyone was focused on whether the sword god would show up. Whatever. After all, he's challenging the sword god of Zhonghai. What has that got to do with me, Chin Yong? Sorry, never heard of him. Thinking this, Chin Yong yawned and handed the phone back to Shahi. Hey, you're done already, old Chin? Shahi was stunned. You're not planning to go check it out? It's boring. He's looking for the sword god of Zhonghai, which has nothing to do with us little guys, Chin Yong said casually, linking his hands behind his head. When immortals fight, mortals suffer. It's best if we stay out of the commotion. As soon as the words left his mouth, Shahi's eyes flew wide open. He stared at Chin Yong in shock, not expecting to hear such a detached comment from him. Old Chin, you actually have a point. Chin Yong just shrugged in response and didn't say anything else. He headed straight to his station to start his daily shift. After all, the reward from the sword demon had already dropped, and this sword saint was of no use to him at all. It didn't matter how much the guy clamored. If a dog is barking like crazy on the street, you don't go and bite it back, do you? Besides, according to the system's logic, this sword saint should be dead in 500 years anyway. He'll just turn to dust eventually and won't trigger any more rewards, so why should I bother getting worked up over a dead man? With this thought, Chin Yang's mind cleared. With that kind of spare time, I'd be better off continuing to improve my own strength. Thinking this, Chin Yong pushed his cart, humming a little tune about slacking off as he moved between the library shelves, putting away books. Then, in his spare moments, he continued to master a step to the horizon. After all, this movement technique, just like the heaven-slaying sword draw before it, was also emperor level. Its power was astonishing, and it was incredibly profound and difficult to understand. It certainly wasn't something he could master in one night. Obtaining a technique is one thing, but completely digesting and mastering it is something else entirely. But fortunately, time is always on my side. Chin Yong closed his eyes, continuing to slack off, model. Diving his consciousness into the realm of enlightenment, he watched as the profound and obscure characters within disassembled one by one, breaking down into more vivid and lively meanings, rapidly accelerating his progress of comprehension. Deconstructing, reassembling, comprehending. Several days passed just like that. Chin Yong went back to his old laid-back lifestyle, slacking off at work to contemplate, and after work, petting his fox and savoring all the world's delicacies. Life was peaceful. Meanwhile, as the sword god remained silent, the public's enthusiasm began to wane, and some negative voices started to emerge in online discussions. How many days has it been? Is he gonna fight or not? The new sword god hasn't chickened out, has he? Even if he doesn't want to fight, he should at least come out and say something. Leaving Yuan Zhan hanging for this long is just outrageous. He probably just got cold feet. In my opinion, this sword god of Zhonghai isn't all that. More and more negative comments began to spread. When the citizens of Zhonghai saw this, they couldn't stand it. After all, since the Lishui Lake incident, the sword god was a revered hero to Zhonghai City. They would never allow anyone to slander him. So, they immediately organized and launched a rebuttal online. Lord Sword God doesn't even want to bother with a clown like Yuan Zhan. Fighting him would be beneath him. He's just some brute from the prairie who shows up for no reason to start trouble, and somehow people think he's in the right? For a while, the two factions online were locked in a war of words, arguing endlessly over the issue. Sword Valley. As dusk fell, a cool breeze swept across the cliffs, adding a slight chill to the air within the valley. Master, today is the last day. Standing on high ground in the valley, Xiao Huo looked at Yuan Zhan beside him and spoke cautiously. At that moment, Yuan Zhan was sitting cross-legged on the ground, gazing up at the sky. His face, weathered and worn, appeared exceptionally old. For 5 days, he hadn't taken a single step out of Sword Valley, waiting day and night. He was just waiting for that battle with the sword god of Zhonghai. But as things stood, he and his disciple hadn't even seen his shadow. "He will come, he will definitely come," Yuan Zhan murmured in a hoarse voice. Then, with a withered hand, he grasped the hilt and slowly drew his sword. In an instant, a terrifying stellar pressure radiated outwards. Boom, the ground cracked and rubble was sent flying. Under the assault of the stellar pressure, the sword intent within the valley faintly began to show signs of dissipating. "Master, what are you?" Xiao Huo's pupils constricted, and he hastily took a step back. He could see in an instant that Yuan Zhan had become hysterical, descending into madness. "Do not be afraid, my disciple," Yuan Zhan said coldly, a glint of madness flashing in his eyes, "since the sword god refuses to come. Then I shall destroy this sacred sword valley and force him to come to me." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly erupted with a frightening wave of stellar power and slashed towards the entire valley. The next moment, countless remnants of sword aura were disturbed by it, canceling each other out. In an instant, all the sword aura within Sky Sword Valley vanished into nothingness. The massive disturbance erupted. Reporters, who had been monitoring the scene, were shaken and quickly recorded the event, uploading it to the internet. The next day, when Qin Yang arrived at the library for work, he saw Shahi fuming, looking utterly helpless in his rage. "This is outrageous, absolutely outrageous. What's wrong?" Qin Yang asked, confused. "It's that old geezer, Yuan Zhan. He actually destroyed Sword Valley." Shahi, seething with anger, furiously tapped on his phone, engaging in a heated online argument. In the hearts of Zhonghai's people, Sword Valley is a martial arts sanctuary. And Yuan Zhan destroyed it with a single strike. This was, without a doubt, a slap in the face to every single person in Zhonghai. "Calm down, take it easy." Qin Yang placed a hand on Shahi's shoulder, comforting him softly. Of course, he understood. The Sword Saint of the Prairie was doing this to provoke him, to force the sword god of Zhonghai to make a move. Why did he have to go and destroy public property? Qin Yang sighed. He had already considered the man a mad dog, but now that he'd destroyed Sword Valley, things were different. "If that's the case, then I'll go and meet you." Chapter 71. Sword God of Zhonghai, we finally meet. Zhonghai City, Sword Valley. Several Black Hawk helicopters circled, speeding over the vast pine forest below. A reporter stood in the cabin, leaning out of the aircraft to report to the camera on the situation in Sword Valley behind them. Down in the canyon below, a massive gash, a chasm, hundreds of meters deep, stretched from one side to the other. The valley's sword chi and spiritual aura were gone, leaving only devastation in its wake. Yuan Zhan hovered above this gaping wound, his stellar pressure surging, coalescing into a solid blockade. Rumble. Seeing the situation, the arriving helicopters didn't dare to get too close. They could only circle the nearby airspace, filming with their cameras, and broadcast the terrifying scene online. In just a moment, the entire web erupted. Netizens began voicing their opinions, sparking a massive wave of condemnation. "Unacceptable. This is completely unacceptable. The Sword Valley is a sacred treasure for all sword cultivators. And he just destroyed it. Yuan Zhan must be out of his mind. To think he'd do something so destructive and short-sighted. Sword Valley, can we get a comment? He's severed the path for future generations. What a despicable act by Yuan Zhan." At this moment, everyone following the story online was filled with righteous fury. Unsurprisingly, public opinion was entirely on the side of Zhonghai City. However, this was ultimately just helpless rage. After all, Yuan Zhan was a master at the peak of the Grandmaster realm. He was one of the rarest masters in the entire country. Almost no one could stand against him. Meanwhile, outside the Sword Valley, the sea of trees rustled like the ocean. The Star Marshal Police Tactical Team was urgently deployed, setting up a yellow cordon. Sealing off the entrance to the Sword Valley, the police chief stood at the gorge's edge, directing the scene. He looked up at Yuan Zhan, hovering high above, as the Hall Master stood by his side. An absolute madman. They both sighed, their hearts a tangled mess of anger and bitterness. Fighting someone from a higher realm is like trying to cross mountains and oceans. Once a peak Grandmaster like Yuan Zhan makes a move, those of us in the innate realms stand no chance. In his eyes, killing us would be as easy as crushing an ant. The situation is now extremely critical. To force out the sword god of Zhonghai, Yu Wenzan has already destroyed the Sword Valley, wiping out a sacred land of the sword with his bare hands. But if the sword god still doesn't show up to fight, knowing Yu Wenzan's personality, he'll likely head to Duangfeng Mountain and destroy that sacred place too. Once the sacred places are gone, all that will be left are innocent civilians. In other words, Zhanghai City is now on the brink of hell. A disaster could strike at any moment. A walking catastrophe has arrived on our doorstep. The more the chief thought about it, the heavier his heart became. Right now, the only way to placate Yu Wenzan is to find the sword god of Zhanghai. But the biggest problem with that is whether the sword god is even still in the city. At this thought, the chief looked up at Yu Wenzan in the sky. He took a cigarette from his pocket and lit it, trying to ease the pressure. The hall master beside him shook his head and said, "These grand masters are all extremely eccentric. Most of them prefer to wander the world with no fixed abode." Yeah, the chief sighed helplessly. All these days, and still no response to the challenge. Maybe the sword god doesn't even care about this little city and has already left Zhanghai. Old Li has already gone to look for any trace of the sword god. But we can't just sit back and wait. We have to negotiate with the sword saint of the steppes. The chief took a final drag from his cigarette, crushed the butt, and turned toward the Sword Valley. We can't let him carry on this rampage. Just as the words left his mouth, suddenly, a sharp whistling sound cut through the air. Before anyone could react, a slender figure shot past like a blur, breaking straight through the cordon and rushing recklessly into the Sword Valley. In an instant, both the hall master and the chief recognized the person's aura. It's Lu Rian. Lu Rian moved through the forest, her beautiful face contorted with rage. Her elegant brows were tightly furrowed, and the hand gripping her sword was trembling. "That bastard, how dare he? How dare he destroy my master's legacy?" She gritted her teeth, her mind clouded with fury. As she rushed, she could feel that the valley's spiritual energy was completely gone, and her heart ached with anguish. Everything was destroyed. Everywhere she looked, the cliff walls were shattered to pieces. The deeper she went into the valley, the more devastating the ruin. All her memories of her master's lessons here vanished like smoke. There's nothing left. At that thought, Lu Rian's emotions instantly overwhelmed her reason, and her rage became boundless. In a moment, she was right below the culprit. Yu Wenzan, looking down at her, was also surprised. He sent a telepathic message. "So, it's you, Senior, your actions are beneath contempt." Lu Rian's eyes were red with fury as she roared at the sword saint, a dignified sword saint, doing something so utterly shameless. "Haha, you little girl, you're quite anxious. I must have destroyed something you hold very dear, haven't I?" Yu Wenzan laughed loudly at her words, surveying the wreckage of Sword Valley. "It seems you really are the sword god's disciple. Tell your master to come and fight. If I am defeated, I will of course apologize to him. My master would never fight a person like you." Lu Rian stared at Yu Wenzan, hissing word by word, "My master has never considered you an equal. He wouldn't waste his time on a pathetic clown like you." As her words fell, each one pierced the heart. Insolence. High above, Yu Wenzan's pupils contracted as his expression instantly turned grim. Those words had struck a nerve. If the Zhanghai sword god still refused to fight, then all of his efforts would have been in vain, and he would have become a laughingstock for nothing. And on top of that, he was being lectured by a mere junior. How arrogant. At this thought, Yu Wenzan looked down at Lu Rian, a sinister glint flashing in his eyes. "Has your master not taught you that carelessness in speech leads to disaster? A pity, some lessons take a lifetime to learn." The moment he finished speaking, he slowly raised his sword, aiming it at Lu Rian. In the next instant, a tyrannical sword intent leapt from the tip of the blade and plunged straight down. It felt like the weight of a mountain pressing down, sealing off all of Lu Rian's escape routes. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to go. It was slow and tortuous, as if intending to crush her alive. Clang! Lu Rian raised her sword to defend herself, but the moment she drew it, the blade shattered inch by inch. It turned to dust and vanished into the air. Death seemed inevitable. Despair filled Lu Rian's face as she futilely mustered her stellar energy to resist, but she still couldn't stop the sword energy from closing in. Just as she was overcome with despair, suddenly, the sound of the wind ceased. The space around her began to vibrate violently. The next moment, a visible ripple appeared in the air. Boom! A figure in a black robe crossed an immense distance in an instant, appearing inches from Lu Rian, shielding her with his body. Immediately after, an even more tyrannical sword intent erupted, clashing head-on with Yuan Zan's. It effortlessly neutralized the entire attack. Good. High in the air, the prairie sword saint looked at the newcomer, a ferocious, excited smile spreading across his face. Zhanghai Sword God, we finally meet. Chapter 72. Heaven-slaying sword drawing art, defeating the sword saint in a single blow. The overwhelming sword intent receded like thin snow melting in early spring. Qin Yang stood before Lu Rian, clad in a black robe. He had effortlessly dispersed the crushing sword intent with his bare hands. Good. So you've finally come, Zhanghai Sword God. Yuan Zan hovered high in the air, looking down on the scene. His eyes burned with excitement, his gaze locked firmly onto Qin Yang's aura. He had traveled across thousands of mountains and rivers to Zhanghai for this very purpose. All for this one battle with the sword god. Now, his wish was half fulfilled. The battle to come was the true main event. He would not let the Zhanghai sword god out of his sight before it began. Hey, to attack a young girl like this, you are truly unworthy of the title Sword Saint, Your Excellency. Qin Yang looked up at Yuan Zan, his voice laced with anger. What kind of pathetic sword saint has no martial honor? He wouldn't even spare someone at the Hushan realm like Lu Rian. If I had been even a step later, she would already be dead beneath his sword. If Lu Rian were gone, how would I get the damn system's reward cards in the future? Haha, curse me all you want. This old man doesn't care. Infamy is nothing but passing smoke. At those words, Yuan Zan spread his arms and laughed loudly. When a man dies, his light goes out. In 100 years, everyone in this world will be gone. Only I, who single-mindedly pursues the way of the sword, will be able to achieve the supreme martial way. As his words fell, the sound rolled like thunder. His voice echoed through the canyon cliffs, traveling for thousands of miles. Whoosh, whoosh. A distant helicopter circled around, its telephoto lens focusing on the canyon, live streaming their conversation. In an instant, it spread like wildfire across the internet. Everyone who heard Yuan Zan's declaration of his Dao was utterly stunned. Some even came to admire his determination. Setting aside the old man's insane actions, of course, with such great perseverance and resolve alone, his future achievements would be limitless. Who cares about the way of the sword? The Zhanghai sword god is finally here. Come on, fight, fight. I want to see rivers of blood. One after another, the bullet comments flooded in. The live stream chat room quickly filled the entire screen. After 100 years, he will achieve the great path. Down below, Qin Yang listened to Yuan Zan's crazed speech and shook his head. He finally understood the man's nature. Just like Xiao Huo, they're the type who can't live without going to extremes. No wonder he'll raise the future sword demon. However, after 500 years, you'll just be a pile of dust too. Neither of us should be laughing at the other. Master. At that moment, Lu Rian slowly opened her eyes. Seeing Qin Yang standing protectively in front of her, she was overwhelmed with emotion. But soon, the sight of the ruined sword valley around them met her eyes, and her spirits sank. I'm sorry, Master. Everything has been destroyed. I failed to protect your sword valley. It doesn't matter, my disciple. As long as you're okay, that's all that matters. Qin Yang smiled at Lu Rian, knowing she was desperate to protect the land. He comforted her in a gentle voice. If the people survive, the land can be reclaimed. If the land is saved but the people are lost, then both are truly lost. The sword valley can be rebuilt if it's gone, but a good disciple like you, your master won't be able to find another. As his gentle words faded, Lu Rian's heart skipped a beat, and a slight shimmer appeared in her eyes. So I'm that important to my master? As she thought of this, Lu Rian's spirits lifted, but the current situation was critical. Staying here would only get in the way and become a burden to her master. With this in mind, she wisely said to Qin Yang, Master, please be careful. Your disciple will withdraw now. Qin Yang nodded slightly. When gods fight, mortals suffer. A battle between grandmasters like them is on a world-destroying level. Post-celestial star warriors would die instantly if they were even grazed. It's incredibly dangerous. Soon, both disciples had departed. The canyon was quiet and deep. Yuan Zan was high up in the sky, while Qin Yang was down on the ground. A cold killing intent spread outwards, sweeping through the entire sword valley. In that case, let's draw our swords. Qin Yang's expression was calm, not planning to waste any more words. The moment he finished speaking, Biwum, a soaring purple light lit up the sky. The Zway divine sword instantly appeared in his hand. Radiant light filled the sky, accompanied by a clear, resonant sword chime full of ancient charm. A fine sword. Seeing this, Yu Wenzan, who was up above, couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. A divine weapon with its own spirit. He had searched for half his life, and had never seen such a divine artifact. Today, his eyes had finally been opened. Do you intend to stay on the ground and not come up to fight me? Yu Wenzan's brow furrowed slightly. Their current positions were unequal. Even if he won, it wouldn't be an honorable victory. What he sought was a hearty, all-out battle, not a contest where his opponent was at a disadvantage. No need, I'm in a hurry. A single strike will be enough to decide this. With that said, Qin Yang slightly bent his knees, turned sideways, and leaned forward, placing his hand on the hilt of the Zway sword to prepare his draw. Crack. His aura became restrained, his sword intent silent and invisible. It solidified and spread outwards. The rock beneath his feet couldn't withstand the pressure, cracking and disintegrating as his body sank. From an outsider's perspective, it looked as if he was sinking into the earth. It was suppressive and silent. Grandmaster-level sword intent. Yu Wenzan's expression grew solemn as he watched this. He also began to channel his own star power, unleashing his perfected myriad swords return as one technique. The next moment, a powerful sword intent swept through the entire sword valley as tens of thousands of sword energies flew through the air. It surrounded the sword valley, as if countless swordsmen were fighting within. A vast killing intent rose, kicking up sand and dust that blotted out the sun. It was as shocking as dark clouds pressing down from the sky. Outside the valley, the arriving helicopter swayed violently in the turbulent air. The pilot gripped the controls tightly, struggling to keep the aircraft steady and prevent it from crashing in the turbulence. Through the shaking camera lens, the viewers in the official live stream chat were completely stunned. It made their scalps tingle. They had thought that the myriad swords return as one used by Xiao Huo that day had already reached the peak of perfection, but as it turned out now, he didn't even touch the edge of great success? That is unbelievable. On the other hand, looking at Qin Yang, the viewers in the live stream are completely baffled. Right now, Qin Yang's feet are sunk deep into the rocky ground. He is crouched in a sword-drawing stance, silent and motionless, as if time itself has frozen around him. He is in sharp contrast to Yu Wenzan. While the amateurs are just watching the spectacle, the experts see the true skill at play. In the live stream, some of the Star Warriors who specialize in the way of the sword have begun to see the profound mystery within. At this moment, Yu Wenzan and Qin Yang's techniques are locked in a fierce, head-on confrontation. They represent the two extremes of motion and stillness. The myriad swords returning to ancestry technique captures the ultimate essence of motion. It draws tens of thousands of strands of sword chi from the world, like a pilgrimage to a single point. In contrast, Qin Yang's sword Dao is about reaching the ultimate void and maintaining stillness. He pursues that singular line of peak perfection. Comparing the two, it is clear that Qin Yang is more in harmony with the way of the sword than Yu Wenzan is. Buzz. Along with the clear, ringing hum of both their longswords, Yu Wenzan and Qin Yang seem to share a telepathic connection as they move at the exact same time. In the next instant, Yu Wenzan raises two fingers. Thousands upon thousands of strands of sword chi converge into a vast river, surging into a sea in a split second. He strikes down at Qin Yang on the ground, like a vast ocean pouring from the heavens. There is nowhere to hide and no way to retreat. Qin Yang looks up at the sea of swords falling from the sky. He grips the hilt of his sword and suddenly exerts his full power. He draws his sword directly, striking upward against the overwhelming force. Clang. As Zway is unsheathed, a breathtakingly beautiful sword light flashes. The earth turns to dust, and the very void seems to crack and explode. Chapter 73. What? This is actually just a clone of the sword god? Within the valley, rocks shatter and canyon walls collapse, crashing to the ground. A deafening explosion erupts. The blinding sword light blots out the sun and sky, completely overwhelming the light of day. The two massive surges of sword chi collide and entwine with a roar like thunder. In an instant, the sea of clouds splits, and a boundless sword light rises like the first light of dawn. It charges toward Yu Wenzan, who comes with the force of 1,000 armies. Boom! The camera in the distant helicopter locks its focus, but the screen immediately goes completely white. Not a single frame of the scene can be captured anymore. The viewers in the live stream can't see anything but a white screen on their phones. The chat explodes instantly. Holy crap, are they dropping a nuke? We're all getting radiated here. Is he even human? This is a battle of the gods. No wonder grandmasters are so rare. This kind of power could take on an entire army by itself. Watch the flashbang on A1, bro. At the same time, such a magnificent sight naturally draws the attention of everyone outside the valley. Lu Rian and Xiao Huo stand side by side on a cliff. They raise their hands to shield their eyes, watching this terrifying sight through their fingers. These former enemies have set aside their grudges for this moment. They both look up at this earth-shaking scene with burning, admiring eyes. Teacher is so strong. Looking at the dawn-like sword light, Lu Rian's yearning to become a powerhouse grows even stronger. One day, I will be as strong as my teacher. Beside her, Xiao Huo also clenches his fists and makes a silent vow. He swears to become a powerhouse like Yuan Zhan in the future. This heroic and magnificent scene is etched deep into their memories like falling spring rain. It nourishes the seeds of sword Dao in their hearts, giving them plenty of nutrients. Rumble. A moment later, the deafening roar begins to fade. The flashing sword light dims, as if a curtain is about to fall. A thick, spiritual aura swirls around the canyon and mountains. After the fusion of two different sword intents, the aura is 100 times thicker than before. Another sacred land of sword chi has been formed. Outside the valley, everyone cranes their necks, looking toward the center. Viewers in the live stream are so nervous they've forgotten to send comments. Everyone is holding their breath, waiting for the final winner to emerge. After a wait that felt like an eternity, they finally see the sword light dissipate. Only then can they see the scene clearly. Inside the canyon, the ground is covered in massive craters. Qin Yang stands tall between heaven and earth, looking calm and composed. The Zuwei divine sword in his hand hums cheerfully, and in front of him, Yuan Zhan is also standing proudly on the ground. However, blood is trickling from the corner of his mouth, and his face is as pale as a sheet. The sword in his hand has turned to dust, not even the hilt remains. He looks absolutely wretched. I lost. Yuan Zhan looked desolate as he let the dust in his palm scatter in the wind. With this sword, he had once defeated all the prodigies in the world. But now, with his sword shattered and his spirit broken, it was all gone. He had been so utterly defeated. He was simply not in the same league as the Zhonghai sword god. He had been completely overpowered in every aspect. It truly only took one strike to decide the outcome of this duel. Thinking of this, Yuan Zhan looked at Qin Yang before him, the details of him drawing his sword replaying in his mind. Attain the ultimate emptiness, maintain profound tranquility. Could it be that this is the true essence of the sword Dao I should have been pursuing? My 10,000 swords return to one has been on the wrong path from the very beginning. Zhonghai sword god, your sword is indeed more in harmony with the sword Dao than mine, Yuan Zhan murmured in admiration, the dim light in his eyes flaring up once more. It was as if he had a sudden, heart-pounding epiphany. This was the opportunity to break through to the Grandmaster realm. He was obsessed with the sword, seeking only a worthy opponent. The sword god had now become the goal he would strive for. Even though he lost this battle, it was not without its gains. Noticing the change in Yuan Zhan's expression, Qin Yang couldn't help but marvel inwardly. As expected of the master of the future sword devil, this mentality of fighting on despite repeated defeats is truly commendable. However, Qin Yang looked at the resolute Yuan Zhan, a playful smile tugging at his lips. When I leave in a bit, I just hope you old-timers don't lose your composure. Just then, the sound of rushing wind was heard as Lu Rian and Xiao Huo arrived at the same time. Seeing the situation, they immediately understood that the victor had been decided. Master won. In an instant, two completely different feelings arose in their hearts. Lu Rian was overjoyed. HMPH, that's my master. My master is invincible. On the other side, Xiao Huo quietly walked to Yuan Zhan's side. With a complicated expression, he looked at his dejected master, his heart filled with mixed feelings. The Zhonghai sword god is actually so strong that even master is no match for him. However, Xiao Huo's turbulent heart soon calmed down. Yuan Zhan had always taught him that failure is not to be feared. One's true opponent is always oneself. So what if his master was defeated now? Since the Zhonghai sword god is number 1, then he could also achieve the true essence of the sword Dao by making him his goal to surpass. This thought, Xiao Huo's mind suddenly became clear. Even the way he looked at Qin Yang became fervent. If Qin Yang knew he had inexplicably gained 2 fanboys, he surely wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. Outside the valley, several figures were speeding towards the center of the valley. Old Li led the way, leaping through the sea of pines. A group of Zhonghai masters followed closely behind him like a flock of birds. Old Li, your perception of sword intent is the sharpest. Who on earth won? A commander beside him asked anxiously. Just now, the flash of sword light was followed by a chaotic surge of sword intent everywhere. We couldn't discern what was happening inside, but any martial artist from Zhonghai has long seen the sword god as a figure of faith. We absolutely cannot accept his defeat. Sword god won, Old Li replied loudly, his expression elated, unable to contain his excitement. At the same time, he felt a bit of regret. He had been searching for him everywhere outside, but who would have known? He would appear directly in the Sword Valley. He missed part of that battle just now, a tremendous loss. What a shame. Alright, I should be going. In the center of the Sword Valley, Qin Yang saw that things were settled. Staying here won't get me any system rewards, so there's absolutely no point. So, he brushed his hand over the body of his sword, Zoe, turning it into a wisp of sword energy that dissipated into the sky. Faintly, a few sword cries echoed, conveying a hint of displeasure. Zoe had a sentient nature to begin with. It was kept hidden in its scabbard by Qin Yang every day. This was a rare chance to come out and play, but it hadn't had enough fun yet. Being put away again so soon, it was naturally unhappy. Seeing this, Qin Yang smiled and said softly, "I'll bring you out to play again next time." As his voice fell, the sword cries finally quieted down. Seeing this, the nearby Yuan Zhan was filled with envy. Top-tier divine weapon paired with formidable power. This Zhonghai sword god's foundation is just too incredible. With such resources at his disposal, his level of cultivation and enlightenment must be exceptionally profound. Thinking of this, Yuan Zhan stepped forward, about to ask Qin Yang some questions about cultivation. However, the next moment, before he could even ask, he saw Qin Yang's figure slowly dissipate, turning into starlight and vanishing between heaven and earth. A form left by sword energy. Seeing this, Yuan Zhan was stunned. The excited look on his face instantly froze. Chapter 74. The Sword Saint's defenses are broken, he succumbs to his inner demons. Outside the Sword Valley, the noise of the crowd was incessant. The people from Zhonghai City who had rushed over were treading through the forest leaves, heading towards the center of the Sword Valley with looks of excitement. They couldn't wait to see the sword god. Haha, that sword saint was so aggressive, insisting that our Zhonghai sword god come out for a fight. I didn't expect him to be so weak. After this battle, the so-called sword saint will become a clown. Pa, what damn sword saint? He even destroyed the sacred martial arts ground of our Zhonghai. To do something with such a lack of martial virtue, he's simply unworthy of the title, Sword Saint. As they spoke, they immediately sensed Qin Yang's figure turning transparent, before disappearing into thin air. Old Li let out a cry of surprise, also noticing that something was wrong with the sword god's aura. It was as if he had vanished out of thin air. Inside the Sword Valley, a cool wind blew through the lingering sword energy. The three of them looked at Qin Yang's now empty spot. It was as if the battle just now had been nothing but a dream. What's going on? Xiao Huo, completely bewildered, walked over to where Qin Yang had been and circled the spot. A living person just vanished like that? And this didn't look like the trace of a movement technique. It was more like a ghost silently dissolving in the sunlight. Such a bizarre situation left even Lu Rian, who was standing beside him, completely dumbfounded. Her teacher was clearly right next to her a moment ago, but he left just like that. It happened so fast, she was caught completely off guard. Master, where is the Zhonghai sword god? Xiao Huo asked, looking towards the grassland sword saint. But when his words fell, Yuan Zhan didn't respond. With his hands behind his back, he walked to the spot where Qin Yang had disappeared. His expression changed several times, excitement, contemplation, shame, a mix of complex emotions flashed across his face. Until finally, his gaze became incredibly grim. You must know, As a master at the peak of the Grandmaster realm, his perception was extremely powerful. If the Zhonghai sword god had used a movement technique, it would have been impossible to not leave a single trace. But at this moment, the surrounding void was silent, without the slightest sign of a ripple. So, the only possible explanation now was a clone. The real Zhonghai sword god had never even come. He had actually been fighting a clone for so long, and he had lost. At this thought, Yu Wenzhan's vision swam. Overwhelmed with rage and shame, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Peeved, a spray of blood mist bloomed, dyeing a large patch of ground red and adding a touch of sorrow to the scene. Master, Xiao Huo was startled and quickly stepped forward to support Yu Wenzhan. Master, what's wrong with you? Ha 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 ha. Yu Wenzhan laughed miserably and desolately. The metallic taste of blood filled his throat, and it continuously trickled from the corner of his mouth as he murmured in despair. A clone, it was just a clone. Zhonghai sword god, so in your eyes, this is all I'm worth? The feeling of despair erupted in an instant. At this moment, he finally realized just how vast the gap was between himself and the Zhonghai sword god. It was like mountains and vast seas, a gap he could never cross in this lifetime. He had given his all in that fight just now, yet he couldn't even defeat his opponent's clone. Thinking of this, Yu Wenzhan's sword heart shattered. The sky began to brighten as the sun climbed higher. He stared up at the vast heavens, leaning in his disciple's arms, letting the blood fill his mouth and nose. He stretched out a hand as frail as a withered branch, trying to grasp at the sea of clouds above. Again and again, as if he wanted to seize something. The sky remained forever distant, forever out of reach. Finally, under the gazes of Lu Riyan and Xiao Huo, he dropped his futile hand, closed his eyes in despair, and passed out on the spot. Master, seeing this, Xiao Huo panicked and quickly steadied Yu Wenzhan. He was completely stunned. He had never seen his master in such a state. His sword heart was extinguished, his face a mask of despair. It was a clear sign of cultivation deviation. Realizing this, Huo didn't dare hesitate and immediately helped Yu Wenzhan leave the Sword Valley. Soon, only Lu Riyan was left in the empty Sword Valley. She silently watched the master and disciple leave, letting out a sigh of relief in her heart. So that was just the teacher's clone. Lu Riyan chuckled softly, looking towards the spot where Qin Yang had left. Her eyes were sparkling with excitement. You have to understand how powerful the Grassland Sword Saint is. With a single move of his sword, the entire Zhonghai city would have to bow to his might. And yet, such a powerful individual was actually defeated by the teacher's clone, without him even showing up in person. That's just insane. So, just how powerful is the teacher's true strength?